think I finally got the giggles out of me, at least enough for the time being. All right. I was realizing part of it was because I was realizing, oh my god, that just this title, like this subject, people are gonna be thinking I'm trolling, but it's because I see those patterns, I see those patterns, but I'm also a critical enough thinker that I can see the other side of the perspective where they're gonna go like, oh, you're either trolling or you're a conspiracy, like this, you're just blowing smoke up our ass, like what the hell are you talking about? But at the same time, there is a level of truth with the things lining up, and that just you want to be aware of these kinds of things because this is exactly the kind of one where it's like, it's not like a big deal until it's an enormous big deal. So let's get to it. So, is JK Rowling colonizing butterscotch? Lately, every time I walk down the coffee creamer aisle, I get a specific kind of dread. And it's not because the options are bad. There's more options than ever. And one of the options I love, the flavor is amazing, but it's the name that gets me. It's called Butterbeer. And I'm not a Harry Potter person. I'm a butterscotch person. I've been this way since I was a kid. I love the flavor, that specific warm caramelized brown sugar butter like flavor. It's always felt extremely cozy, long before I knew that the culture said that this is unfashionable. It's old man, old lady candy, it's not hip to like that, Long before those days, I was a fan of butterscotch. So I've been noticing that it seems that butterscotch has left our collective consciousness, and Harry Potter has remembered it for us, or more precisely, and claimed it and invaded our mindscape for us with that. Because what I'm noticing lately is that in the food industry, the past few years, there's been a lot of Harry Potter franchise IP licensed, food products. There's freaking Butterbeer cold foam creamer. There's Butterbeer coffee creamer. There's Butterbeer cookies. There's Butterbeer Goldfish crackers. And the flavor itself is butterscotch, but the name on the packaging is not. It's Butterbeer. It's proper noun. It's intellectual property. Now, this is why I want to talk to you about why this distinction matters more than it seems. I should tell you where I'm coming from. I'm 32, I'm non-binary, and I have been increasingly critical of JK Rowling for the past several years for a very public and sustained campaign against trans people, including people like me. So I'm not a neutral observer here. I have a reason to be sensitive to the cultural reach of her franchise. I notice when it expands, I notice what it touches. What it has touched apparently is one of my favorite flavors. And that's where it gets complicated because the products taste good. I've bought them. I've stood in the grocery aisle, picked up the creamer with the freaking castle on it. If it has a castle on it, I don't freaking know. I'm not obsessed with that. I'm not gonna pull it out of my fridge and go check it at the moment. But and I'm not gonna trust in the AI that it has a castle on the image. But yeah, I picked up one of these bottles. I've stood in line and felt generally conflicted, but put it in my cart anyway because I love the flavor and sometimes it's the freaking it's the good place. We're all going to hell anyway because all these crazy ass motherfuckers on top of us are making us have no decisions except the bad decisions. Right? So so yeah, I'm like, this is just the postmodern reality where everything's screwed, there is no voting for your dollar and winning, like you're forgetting crony capitalism exists and all this, economic fuckery. So uh, so I love the flavor, but you're seeing it being replaced. The only place you see butterscotch now is the hard candies and the little melties, the little butterscotch chips. Wow, I sounded really English there. Melties. That sounds like something that English people would use as a slang for chocolate chips. For baking chocolate. They're melties. Yeah, like freaking the butterscotch chocolate chips and the butterscotch hard candies. You'll still find those, and they'll be labeled butterscotch. But if you're finding a lot of other butterscotch flavored food products out there in the market, they're almost all now under the Harry Potter IP. They're labeled Butterbeer. So this is where it's just fascinating because butterscotch is not an invention of fiction. It's centuries old confectionery tradition with rich history. The name likely comes from 18th century Britain. Butter and scorched sugar. It belongs to the culinary commons in the same way that vanilla does, or caramel, or cinnamon. No one owns butterscotch. No one should. But ownership doesn't always look like a legal deed. Sometimes it looks like saturation. There's a real and ongoing debate in the art world about who gets to own color. In 2016, the artist Anish Kapoor acquired exclusive rights to Vanta Black, the darkest pigment ever created for artistic use. Other artists were furious. Stuart Semple, in protest, created the world's pinkest pink and made it available to every artist on Earth, with one condition: you had to certify that you were not Anish Kapoor. The debate wasn't really about paint. It was about whether you something that feels like it belongs to everyone, a color, a material, a sensory experience, can be enclosed, can be gated, can be made to pass through one person's identity and ownership before anyone else gets to it. The question applies directly to what is happening with butterscotch. When the Harry Potter franchise attaches itself to this flavor at a mass retail scale in coffee creamers and snack crackers and cookies, it doesn't just borrow the flavor, it begins to define it. For a generation of consumers who didn't grow up with butterscotch as a standalone tradition, butterbeer is the reference point. Butterbeer is where they first encounter that taste. Butterbeer is the world they reach for. See, that's where I instantly am aware of that, and I'm freaked out about that. I'm going, poor Gen Alpha. We're going to start seeing TikToks, with some millennial going, oh, have you ever had butterscotch? What's that? Like, I have no clue, and like, oh, it's that flavor, that you had that tastes like this. Like, you mean butter beer? What are you talking? What's butterscotch? And that's shocking. That's cultural, historical literacy, like, we need to remember these things, as a species, like, everything's going to entropy, full freaking postmodern accelerationism. We need to remember all these little things, And so, yeah. So, but that's how cultural capture works. You don't need a trademark on flavor. You just need to be the biggest, loudest, most visible version of it on the market. You need to be the thing people think of first. And once the IP becomes more legible than the ingredients, the flavor starts belonging to the mythology rather than the commons. And here's the detail that concerns me the most. The cold foam creamer doesn't say butterscotch anywhere in the label. And this is where I actually grabbed it. Look at this. If you look at it, it says butterscotch or butterbeer. Yeah, butterbeer. That's the problem. It doesn't say butterscotch. Butterbeer, artificial flavor. Nowhere in fine print, anywhere on the entire labeling says butterscotch flavor or butterscotch. No reference at all to it. Just butterbeer. Unlike the goldfish crackers, which thankfully at least has in fine print with butterscotch flavor. So this is where the title, it's a little clickbaity, and somebody might read this as trolling or conspiratorial, but there is a real concern here. We want to see more of that. The fine print. It's better than nothing. It's still shit fucking transparency, shit consumer protection, all that stuff. Still shit when it comes to ethics, but it's better than nothing. We do not want to see this, where it doesn't say butterscotch anywhere on the packaging. We do not want to see that. And I don't want to see, I want to see some, some progressive, ethically minded, chefs, people around in the culinary world that are, LGBT advocates. I want you to get out there and start talking about this because, you are some of the perfect people to talk about this issue. I'm one of them too, I'd imagine. I'm the one bringing it up, but you're coming from that whole background of, your life is that procedural knowledge of cooking food, of making meaning out of what you make, so that's really important if you're in that line of work with that line of life. You don't, and if they're taking butterscotch, what's next? And not that I'm wanting to get into the fear, the culture of fear and any of that sensationalist bull crap, but seriously, what's next? Like you don't want that. You don't want it to get that point. We're already living in a dystopia. We don't need to, add the accelerationism on every little aspect of the dystopia and just make it all screwed up. No, this is just absurd. So yeah. So back to what I was saying. The goldfish crackers at least have it in fine print, but the creamer, it's just butterbeer, as if the underlying flavor doesn't need its own name. As if butterscotch is now a subcategory of a fictional drink rather than the other way around. That's not nothing. That's a company making a calculated bet that the IP is now more legible to consumers than the actual ingredient. That's a company deciding that butterbeer has absorbed butterscotch, not the other way around. And if that logic continues, if more products follow the creamer's lead and drop the butterscotch label entirely, we are watching a flavor get renamed in real time. We are watching something that belongs to culinary history get quietly reissued under a copyright. This has happened before in different registers. Colors, sounds, shapes, the art and design world has spent decades grappling with the question of what can be owned and by whom, and what it costs everyone else when something commonly gets enclosed. The Vanta Black controversy was extreme, and I would add sensationalist. And if you want to look into some major drama right now, and I'll probably make a whole video on this separately in the future, but if you want to look into some major drama right now, just look into Stuart Semple's Culture Hustle website. Look into the subreddit on the Culture Hustle website. You will be shocked. You will be going, oh my goodness, what is going on in this world and in this man's mind, and what? But back to the story. So, the Vanta Black controversy was extreme, but the underlying anxiety exposed is everywhere. What happens to a sensory shared language when one entity becomes its primary gatekeeper? With flavor, the stakes are arguably more intimate. Extremely. This is extremely important. This is where we get back to the kids. If Gen Alpha's never experiencing butterscotch, that's the first thing they're memory. That's going to last them their lifetime. You could retrain people, let them unlearn and relearn, but that is always going to be stuck in their head. They're going to have that nostalgic, it's butterbeer, not butterscotch, even though I know it's butterscotch and not butterbeer, It's going to be like that, and that's not fun or cool. So, yeah, because with flavor, the stakes are arguably more intimate. Color is something you see. Flavor is something that lives in memory, in childhood, in the body. When a flavor gets captured by an IP, especially when it's culturally dominant as Harry Potter, the capture doesn't feel abstract. It feels personal. It feels like something was taken from a place you didn't know could be taken from. I didn't consent to having my favorite flavor reissued through someone else's mythology. I didn't agree with that the price of accessing butterscotch in 2026 would be putting a Hogwarts castle in my refrigerator. But here we are. And the more products appear under the Butterbeer label without acknowledging the butterscotch tradition they're built on, the more complete that enclosure becomes. I want to be direct about something. This is a real concern, not a conspiratorial one. There's likely no evil villain in the backroom deciding to steal a flavor, but the absence of malicious intent does not make the structural effect any less real. Enclosures doesn't require a conspiracy. It just requires scale, repetition, and slow disappearance of alternatives. The real question worth asking is what happens to butterscotch in 10 years if the primary cultural association is butterbeer? What happens to the flavor's identity, independent identity, its history, its cultural lineage, its existence outside of fiction? When an entire generation learns it through a branded lens, what happens when food companies, seeing the butterbeer products succeed, to produce their own butterscotch-adjacent items and reach for the more culturally legible name? This is how a flavor loses itself, not through force, through familiarity with someone else's frame. There's a concept I've been turning around over in my head that I think names this experience better than anything else I've found. I'm calling it ethical aftertaste. It's the moral or emotional residue that lingers after you consume something separate from but interacting with the physical taste. I'm going to repeat that. It's the moral or emotional residue that lingers after you consume something, separate from but interacting with the physical taste. Most food discourse ignores this layer entirely, but humans have always eaten with it in mind. Religious dietary laws, fair trade coffee, conflict chocolate, vegan ethics, we've always understood that food carries meaning beyond flavor chemistry. We've always known that something represents, we've always known that what something represents can change how it tastes. For me, butterbeer products leave a good taste on my tongue and a bad taste everywhere else. And what I want to name, not just as a personal complaint, but as a structural observation, is that this is what happens when a flavor gets captured by an IP. The flavor becomes inseparable from the mythology. The mythology carries the author's worldview. The author's worldview has real harm in it. And suddenly the simple pleasure of a caramelized brown sugar thing that you've loved since childhood is threaded through with something that doesn't sit right. The product says come home. The author says you don't belong here. And the flavor gets caught in the middle of that contradiction, is one of the flavors I've loved my whole life. I still buy butterscotch when I find it, the unbranded kind, the hard candies, the puddings, the baking chips, the things that don't have a castle on them. And when I can't find those, I'm standing in the creamer aisle and I think about the fact that butterscotch was here long before Hogwarts, and it'll likely be here after. Brown butter and scorched sugar don't belong to anyone else's intellectual property. The flavor is older than the fiction. It's older than the discourse. It's older than all of this. But I'm watching the gap close between the flavor and the brand. I'm watching the label disappear. And I think that that's worth talking about. Not just as a personal grievance, but as a question about who gets to own the things that belong to everyone. Because if we've learned anything from this debate over who owns a color, it's that these questions matter. Sensory experience is part of the commons, and the commons is worth defending, even when it's being enclosed in something as quiet and unglamorous as a butterscotch hard candy. I just want to be able to reach for it without having to reach through someone else's mythology to get to it. And I think that's a reasonable thing to want. So yeah, that was just the end of my little film script with that. But just the last little thing with that is just, again, just the impact of memories and how we experience sensations as human beings. You know, you take your young daughter or son to an art gallery when they're 7. Do you think that that's going to be a thing that, oh wow, I saw the Mona Lisa and it just impacted me for the rest of my life? When they're that young, they don't have the kind of literacy or the environment or maturation or whatever, the wisdom, I don't know, they just often don't have the variables that produce the sense of, okay, this provides me meaning. They're going to look at a pretty picture or their favorite cartoon and they grow out of it, or it becomes less meaningful, or but when it comes to food, almost every one of you could probably think about one of the first favorite meals you had that your grandma cooked you on Thanksgiving or something, and that you don't want that being replaced. You don't want your family dynamics being replaced by corporate, freaking capitalistic, fuckery with all this manipulation and the metaphysics and ethics in our world, and just it's not cool, And yeah, I'm probably overthinking it, but it's probably because a lot of people are underthinking it. I'm the counterbalance for all the underthinkers in the world. So when people complain about you being an overthinker, you just have to remember, I'm the counterbalance to all the underthinkers out there. I don't know. Not that they're all underthinkers. It's not this binary, all overthinkers are underthinkers. No, there's a lot of normal thinkers too, and a lot of, I'm having a day of brain fog or whatever. But, a lot of nuance, But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because, yeah, it's something interesting I've been noticing recently. And I'm going to laugh my freaking ass off when I start seeing TikToks of freaking, Gen Alpha not knowing what butterscotch is and knowing what butterbeer is, and I'm gonna laugh my ass off, but it's gonna be like crying laughing, like the crying laughing emoji. I don't even think they have a crying laughing emoji. What the hell am I talking about? But you get my point. It's gonna be that kind of, oh my god, it's like watching, Jamie Oliver, that chef. It's like watching Jamie Oliver, trying to teach, young kids about chicken nuggets and healthier eating and stuff. You watch that little clip, you know what I'm talking about. You are laughing your ass off but crying at the same time. If you're an empath, you're laughing your ass off and crying at the same time. You're like, oh my god, my poor brother, I feel you. I want to help these kids too, but oh my god, they're kids, and yeah, that's what happens, and oh my god, just you can't help. It actually takes me back really quick. It takes me back to just this last little line I heard watching One Piece just earlier, because Robin said something along the lines of, I can't tell if it's a tragedy or a miracle, but either way, it's entertaining. I'm like, holy shit! She just summed up my transdualism in one sentence. Like, that's how it's like me living the world now. It's like for over a decade, I was just every single second terrified about dying, terrified of everybody else dying, the heat death of the universe, all that shit, And then I got to the point where I can enjoy it, It's like, yeah, this is evil and I'm going to work against it, but I'm going to enjoy it, I'm not going to enjoy it out of sadism or any, dark triad kind of fuckery trait, It's going to be healthy kind of manipulation, but it's that kind of healthy absurdism, not that nihilistic, unhealthy absurdism, Like, people are so quick to group absurdism with nihilism, but it's like, I could see that the nihilism doesn't seem like it's as broad as absurdism, It's sort of like freaking atheism versus agnosticism. It's like, agnosticism is sort of more of a broad category, But anyway, I'm gonna get going because I feel like I'm just getting ADHD and gonna start ranting on about a whole bunch of other things. So I better get going while I can. If I have to rant about other things, I'll make another video about another rant. So anyway, this has been Sage DeForest over at Saged and Confused, talking about this potential colonization and monopolization of the butterscotch flavor. Because yeah, wouldn't that be terrifying if JK Rowling gets all the butterscotch flavor? Oh yeah, all my puddings and the little butterscotch chocolate chips or butterscotch chips and all the butterscotch hard candies. Oh, if they're all marketed under freaking Harry Potter, I'm gonna start making my own butterscotch. I'm gonna be like, screw you. I'm one of these people that actually knows how to go from the start. I don't have to, oh, you don't know how to cook. Here's a little, a package to, with instructions on how to cook and make your meal. It's like, no, I don't need to buy a little freaking tin with some, asparagus and little things inside of it. I just go and grab a thing of asparagus and go grab the different things and cut it all up. So yeah, and that's what I'll be doing if they completely just screw us all over with the butterscotch. I'll be making it myself. So that's where there's a silver lining. So at least we don't have to end it all on doom and gloom. If it becomes a doom and gloom type of situation, at least there's a silver lining. So like I said, anyway, this has been Sage DeForest over at Sage and Confused. Peace and victory. Sign out.